Think you've seen every 80s slasher worth watching? Think again. Today we're diving into the blood-splattered back shelves of horror history to find some underrated slasher gems that flew under the radar. No Freddy, no Jason, just deep cuts, killer masks, and movies that deserve way more love. Let's get slicing.
You live around this place?
Deep in the Oregon wilderness, a group of campers stumbles into the hunting ground of a towering silent killer. And just before dawn, director Jeff Lieberman trades jump scares for creeping dread, letting the isolation and atmosphere do most of the work. The cinematography is surprisingly beautiful. Misty sunbeams, forest shadows, and a sense that nature itself is watching. But don't let the slow burn fool you. When the violence comes, it's sudden, savage, and uncomfortably real. One death in particular involves a machete to the crotch, a scene that's still shocking for how quietly brutal it is. And the final girl, once she realizes running and screaming ain't gonna cut it, she fights back in one of the most unique, jaw-dropping finales in slasher history. Just Before Dawn might not have the name recognition of Friday the 13th, but is arguably the smarter, scarier, inbred cousin. Also known as Rosemary's Killer, the Prowler is one of the nastiest slashers of the early 80s, and that's saying something. The killer is a World War II veteran in full combat gear, returned home and still nursing a grudge over a Dear John letter. Decades later, he crashes a small-town graduation dance, armed with a bayonet and a serious vendetta. What makes the Prowler stand out isn't the plot, it's the execution, literally. This movie pulls no punches when it comes to gore. Tom Savini, fresh off Friday the 13th and Maniac, delivers some of his most realistic and wince-inducing effects ever. We're talking pitchfork impalements, shotgun blasts, and knife kills that feel almost too real. The film has a cold, almost clinical atmosphere. There's no humor, no real warmth, just dread. Even the music, composed by Friday the 13th's Richard Einhorn, has that whispery menace that gets under your skin. And while the killer's identity might be guessable, the way he stalks his victims with slow, deliberate menace makes every scene a tension fest. It's brutal, stylish, and criminally underwatched. If you want a slasher that doesn't flinch and won't let you either, the Prowler delivers. Ghost story, slasher, gothic nightmare? Hell Night is a little bit of everything, and that's exactly why it rules. Linda Blair stars as one of 4 college pledges who must spend the night in a creepy abandoned mansion as part of a fraternity-sorority initiation ritual. Legend has it the house was the site of a gruesome family tragedy, with one deformed child rumored to have survived and disappeared into the tunnels beneath the estate. The setup sounds familiar, but Hell Night leans hard into its haunted house vibes. Towering gates, candlelit rooms, echoing hallways, and enough cobwebs to choke a Victorian. But just when you're expecting ghosts, boom, the killer shows up. Or maybe killers. What sets this one apart is its atmosphere. The cinematography has a vintage, almost Hammer horror look, eerie and theatrical instead of gritty. And unlike some of her Scream Queen contemporaries, Linda Blair gives her character some real grit. Her final girl arc isn't simply about surviving. She fights, strategizes, and shows some serious backbone by the end. The kills are solid, the tension builds steadily, and the villain feels more monstrous than human. It's more slow burn than bloodbath, but the vibe is immaculate. Equal parts vintage horror and slasher sleaze. A cult classic waiting to be rediscovered. At first glance, The Initiation looks like your typical college slasher. A sorority prank, a spooky location, and a masked killer picking people off one by one. But give it time, and it reveals itself to be something much weirder and way more memorable. Daphne Zuniga plays Kelly, a freshman pledge with a mysterious past. Her final initiation task is to break into her father's department store after hours and spend the night inside. What could go wrong? Well, let's just say the mannequins aren't the only things getting rearranged. It's got everything you want from an 80s slasher. Dream sequences, night security guards who don't make it to the end, terrible dialogue, and some solid kill setups. But what makes the initiation stand out is the bizarre psychological twist hiding under all the blood. There's a backstory involving amnesia, a house fire, and a psychiatric clinic that adds a layer of mystery you don't usually get in this genre. It may take a bit to get going, but once the action shifts to the store, it's pure slasher fun, like Mannequin meets Maniac. And the final reveal, genuinely wild. If you like your slashers with a twist of soap opera and a splash of surrealism, this one's for you.
Is someone there?
Is that you, Debbie?
Less of a body count slasher and more of a gritty early 80s thriller, Eyes of a Stranger still belongs on this list for one reason. It's disturbing as hell. It plays like a proto-Silence of the Lambs, mixing slasher tension with psychological horror and some genuinely unnerving suspense. The plot follows a Miami news anchor, Jane, who starts to suspect that her creepy neighbor is behind a string of rapes and murders happening around the city. She sets out to prove it, alone, because of course she does. What follows is a slow, tense game of cat and mouse, with the killer always just a few steps ahead, until he isn't. Eyes of a Stranger stands out with its grainy visuals, grimy Miami setting, and a sweaty, voyeuristic tone that makes everything feel a little too close for comfort. You'll want to close your blinds and double lock your doors. And then there's Jennifer Jason Leigh in one of her first film roles, playing Jane's younger sister, a blind, deaf, and mute girl who becomes the killer's target. Despite not speaking, Lee gives a powerful performance that adds real emotional weight to the film's final act. Also worth noting, the gore effects were handled by Tom Savini, but much of it was trimmed down to avoid an X rating. Still, what remains is intense, creepy, and deeply unsettling. It's not your typical slasher, but if you like your horror sleazy, suspenseful, and soaked in dread, this one delivers. The Slayer is what happens when a slasher movie has a full-blown existential crisis. It's moody, meditative, and more interested in dread than jump scares. Less about a masked killer in the shadows, and more about the thing that crawls out of your subconscious when no one's around to stop it. The story follows Kay, a troubled painter plagued by disturbing dreams and premonitions of death. She joins her husband, brother, and sister-in-law for a getaway on a remote island, hoping the solitude will bring her peace. Spoiler, it doesn't. They become stranded, and people start dying in gruesome, surreal ways. And Kay begins to suspect the killer may be something she's seen before in her nightmares. But is it a person, a supernatural force, or something pulled from her own subconscious? The film is soaked in atmosphere, fog-choked beaches, rotting buildings, howling wind, and long, quiet stretches of unease. It feels like a ghost story wearing a slasher skin. The kills are sparse but brutal. One in particular involving a pitchfork is still infamous among horror fans. And while the pace might frustrate those expecting non-stop action, the sense of isolation and mounting dread makes it a fascinating outlier in the genre. There's also a Twilight Zone-style twist in the final moments that'll have you rethinking everything that came before. If you like your slashers slow burn and soaked in dream logic, The Slayer is a foggy little nightmare worth checking out.
It's not cranberry sauce.
That scene pretty much sums up Blood Rage, a holiday-themed slasher so drenched in gore and 80s insanity that it borders on parody, and then jumps straight into it with both feet. Set during Thanksgiving, the movie revolves around twin brothers, Todd and Terry. When they were kids, one of them committed a brutal axe at a drive-in and blamed it on the other. Years later, Todd escapes from the mental institution just in time for Thanksgiving dinner, while Terry, the real killer, picks up right where he left off.
How do they show that on TV?
What follows is a delightfully deranged descent into twin-fueled carnage, awkward family tension, and some of the most memorably absurd slasher dialogue ever put to screen. The kills are plentiful, graphic, and frequently ridiculous. Heads are lopped, torsos are split, and blood is spilled like gravy at a disaster Thanksgiving. But what really makes Blood Rage a cult classic is its campy energy. From the synth-heavy score to the over-the-top acting, it's all unhinged in the best way. If you want a slasher that's fast-paced, gloriously gory, and weirdly hilarious, Blood Rage carves out its own bloody little niche. And just remember,
That is not cranberry sauce.
before Scream made slasher self-aware, Stage Fright locked a bunch of actors in a theater and let the blood flow. It's a movie where the line between performance and reality gets obliterated, along with most of the cast. Directed by Michele Soavi, a protege of Dario Argento, the film fuses the stylish excess of Italian giallo with the body count and brutality of American slashers. The result is a neon-soaked nightmare that's equal parts artsy and savage. The killer, silent, methodical, and wearing a giant owl head, somehow manages to be both absurd and terrifying. It shouldn't work, but it absolutely does. He prowls the theater with a cold precision, using drills, chainsaws, and whatever else is lying around backstage to turn the show into a bloodbath. Visually, the film is stunning. Long tracking shots, dramatic lighting, and wide-angle lenses that give everything a dreamlike edge. One of the most memorable moments features the killer sitting on stage, surrounded by mannequins and corpses bathed in spotlight. Unlike most slashers, Stage Fright has style to spare, without skimping on the tension or the kills. It's slick, suspenseful, and somehow makes an owl mask look cooler than it has any right to. Whether you love slashers for the gore, the suspense, or the outrageous kills, these hidden gems deserve a spot on your next horror binge. Did I miss your favorite underrated slasher from the 1980s? Drop it in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, stab that like button and subscribe for more bloody good content. Stay spooky.